If you want to take your kettlebell coaching career to the next level, consider getting certified with Liberstock. Check the first link in the description. Ladies and gentlemen, we have another episode of the Kettle Knights Podcast. Matter of fact, this is episode number 53. And I have with me Moses Dungca. He was running the so-called Kettlebell Sanctuary in Las Vegas, where he was teaching kettlebell sport to kids. So he was doing God's work. And Moses is another one of those OGs, one of those guys who was there when the renaissance of kettlebells was happening in the West, when Pavel came up. So Moses has some great stories. So Moses, welcome to the podcast.
I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother. So every time we start the podcast, we always do the same thing. Give us your backstory. How did you get started with kettlebells? How is everything going down with the Kettlebell Sanctuary? Take it from there.
You know, I've got this note up here that's right in front of the wake. How do I get rid of it? There's this being recorded, but it's right on front of my screen.
Yeah, you can tap it.
It says, away. I don't want to leave the meeting.
You can say confirm. Does it say confirm or understand?
Oh, here you go. Okay, got it. There you go. Okay.
Awesome. Let's go.
So this was probably around 2000, 2001, and I actually don't remember where I got the information from, but I saw some sort of an ad that had something to do with the kettlebell, with Pavel. And I was like, what is this? And I went ahead and bought this 12 kilo hardstyle bell, and I'm in my living room. And you know, I've been a gymnast for many years, around competitive for about 11, 12 years, and I went on to do shows for about 10 years as well. And I've always done physical things to make myself stay in shape, okay? Weights, you have it. I picked up this bell and I started swinging it, two-hand swing, and my heart rate went through the roof. And I couldn't figure out, why did that happen to me? Because I've been an athlete for so long, I've never had my heart rate go like that. And that got me interested, and that led me to going to Minnesota and becoming an RKC level 1 and then level 2 the following year. And I'm just really gung-ho on this Russian kettlebell.
Yeah, you shared this with me. Yeah, gung-ho. I like this description.
Totally gung-ho. I mean, I told everybody everyone I was around, I told about kettlebell this, kettlebell that. And I'm just, I'm crazy over this. And so it was probably in the second or third year where they made an announcement. They were going to have their first annual kettlebell convention. In Las Vegas, of all places, where I was living. And I went, well, I got to go to this thing, all right? And so it was great. I met some super awesome people. You know, the relationships you make in the kettlebell community are really, really good. Everyone you can think of, I met them, you know. All the top instructors had about an hour to give their training methodology. You can learn what they were doing. But interestingly enough, they invited Valery Fedorenko.
Fascinating, yeah.
And he got up and did a 5-minute demonstration with, I'm pretty sure there were 32s. Yep. And he pumped out 50 reps like it was nothing.
I can imagine.
And I'm sitting there watching him, and I'm like, wait a minute. Why does he make that look so easy? He's not huffing and puffing, and he's moving in the most fluid, nicest way with not any of these sharp movements that we were doing. And I went, why is he doing it like that? And why are we doing it like this? And I think after that, somewhere around 6-8 months, and at this time, Valery's his English wasn't that good. But he put out a message saying that he wanted to start up the American Kettlebell Club, known as AKC, and he just wanted to promote competitive kettlebells. So that's where I made the transition from hardstyle to kettlebell sport. So I've been involved in kettlebell sports since I think it was 2005 or 2006, somewhere in that. So I've been on the sports side since, and since then I'm totally gung ho for the sport.
So transitioning from one side to the other, right?
Being a former athlete and a gymnast, I love to compete, and I needed to have something that I could do that I could compete in. And I actually didn't do very much competitions myself. I think I only did like 2 years of it, but I really went into coaching because I just wanted to teach everyone what I was learning. There's a lot of similarities with kettlebell sport and other sports, especially anything that deals with a swing, which means gymnastics, golf, you name it. Any sport that deals with a swing, it's related.
So my question would be, Moses,
Sure.
you've shared your experience, right, with Valerie when he came. And I've talked to John Duquesne, where he said they invited Valerie back then. But then they decided to stick to their own idea of training because they wanted to become the authority in that sense. Right. So I want to go a little bit deeper on your reaction, because my initial thoughts was, why is there even, or is there even two different ideas of moving the same type of weight? I get it with the fitness stuff. Yes, it's easier to learn. I get it. But at the end of the day, what was your deeper thoughts, and what convinced you to then switch, and what was the reaction in the hardstyle world?
What's the best way to put that? As a competitive gymnast, I was trained really in performance, at a high level of technique, from gymnastics basics all the way up to the highest level. And the hardstyle movements didn't really match the gymnastics movements that I was doing in that way, in their method. The kettlebell sport movements aligned more. And so that was the easiest transition for me, because one thing builds upon each other, and if you don't build the exact position, you're going to end up in the wrong spot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was more a subjective kind of differentiation that you experienced. It was, okay, it's probably, it's for me, it just fits better.
Correct.
And now, with all the knowledge that you have attained, what do you make of this distinction between the two styles, so to speak? Does it make sense? Because, and let me add this, I've also talked to Sean Mosen, so I've talked to a lot of influential figures and a lot of great folks in the kettlebell space. And I like his description the best. He says, it's not about the style, it's about intent. You want to move with a heavy weight, you need more tension and less volume. You want to move with a moderate weight, you want to do more volume and maybe less tension. Even though, the sport guys, the heavyweights, they move with very heavy weights for long volume. So this is something different. It's what I think it's so awesome described by Thierry Sanchez. He says you're building so-called hybrid strength endurance. I really like this term.
Right.
But back to the question, what do you make of it now?
I've always said this for the longest time. For kettlebell sport people, we can do what hardstylers can do, but hardstylers can't do what we can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah. We just choose not to do it in that particular way, because we have a different goal. I mean, we're trying to do as many reps as possible in a certain amount of time. In their case, it's shorter exercises with a lot of force and a lot of tension. Yes. But then also in gymnastics, you have to remember that's an anaerobic sport, and the longest routine in gymnastics is about just over a minute. So as a gymnast, I was trained anaerobically. So kettlebell sport, really, it's an aerobic sport. Because we have to make it to 10 minutes, and that's a really, really long time. I mean, for guys that just really work out, anything beyond a minute is an eternity, and then you're trying to convince them, oh yeah, we're going to do this for 10 minutes. That's pretty hard to do.
It's very hardcore.
Very hard to do.
And that's why I think it develops this type of hybrid or special endurance. I like the way how Thierry Sanchez coined it. He says, because it's not your regular strength endurance, pertaining to kettlebell sport, it's not your regular strength endurance where you do 30 reps with a lighter weight. It is hundreds of reps with heavy weights, which is so crazy. That's why probably your reactions to Valerie was like, how is that even possible?
And I have videos of him still where he did an actual press with a 48 kilo. I think he did 20 presses.
Solid.
Not a push presses. He even pressed to 60 kilo. Did you know that?
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I think I've got it on video. He pressed that thing. I don't think he was intending to do it, but he picked it up and pressed it. Not push press. He pressed it.
Very strong. Very strong.
With kettlebell sport breathing. Inhaling, going up.
Yeah. That's
going up.
Yeah. That's something that is, for me, was the first time I tried it was a little bit strange, but the more you get used to it with the inhaling, and I inhale through the nose, and you get it. There's so much, you need a bigger supply of oxygen when you keep working like this. So make sure there's enough flow of oxygen. So of course the breathing is a little bit different. And let me go back a little bit in time. So why do you think Pavel, because we've talked about this on Instagram, and just to make this clear, to some people then always get mad at this, which of course is normal, it's the internet, but at the end of the day, I always say Pavel will always be part of a discussion pertaining to kettlebells, because he was the one who put it on the map in the West. So even if we say something that doesn't align with his ideologies or ideas, it's nothing personal. So why do you think he chose a complete different route, even though he says, or claimed rather, that he was a master of sport?
Wow.
Because, and let me put it this way again, because I understand from perspective of exercise selection, of course, a deadlift, a press, a squats, a windmill, a get-up. Yes, these are exercises that are not in the curriculum of kettlebell sports. So I understand that you might want to match these into, which I love. I think it's awesome. But why did he choose a completely different route in the ballistics?
Maybe he had no intention of ever developing the sport of kettlebells and just wanted to create something completely different. Could be that. I don't have an exact answer for that. He took it in another direction. I know that he has a tremendous amount of knowledge in terms of flexibility and weight training, possibly Olympic lifting or powerlifting. And I think he ties that into that hard style movement. And so I think your average person would probably understand that. You know as well as I do that trying to explain kettlebell sport to an athlete, it doesn't really register. And most people, it doesn't really get into them until after about a year of training, and then they really understand it. Mm-hmm. But the concepts you can get to people, mm-hmm. but the way that we normally train has almost nothing to do with the sport style of training. Mm-hmm. Like you go to the gym. Now, because your average guy goes to the gym, he's going to do somewhere in between 5 and 8 reps, or if he wants more, he's going to do 12, but he's not going to do 15 to 20.
Unless certainly not 15 or 100, yeah.
100, 150, 200. That no guy thinks that.
Yeah.
But in the sport world, you're thinking if you don't make 180, 200 reps, you're not going to win.
And that's why it's so fringe, right? The idea mm-hmm. of kettlebell sport is so massively fringe that people do not understand that how you can even perform it. I mean, now even I now, I'm not an athlete. I'm not focused on competing. So, but I love the movements. I really fell in love with clean and jerk, long cycle, snatch, and just the fluidity of motion that you've described, that you saw when you observed Valery Fedorenko. And I understand that, man, with these heavy weights, doing this for 10 minutes, that's an eternity, and there's so many things happening in your brain. I mean, I've had a conversation with Valery. He says, he shared this with me. He said, it comes a time where you start sweating fat.
Yeah.
I was like, really? He says, yes. And then maybe one ear is deaf, but you keep moving. I was like, oh my God. So it's so hardcore. That's why I get it. But here's the funny thing, Moses. I share, we in our gym, we train all exercises with kettlebells, deadlift, press, squat, Turkish get up, you name it, and swing. But we also imply a clean and jerk, a snatch, a swing with I call it a little bit a hybrid, a mix between the two. And people get it. I think what people don't get is the amount of time to say, I would never do a class to say, let's do 10 minutes of clean and jerks, 5 minute left, 5 minute right, because that's, unless you have athletes, right?
Right, unless you have an athlete.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you this. I've been doing this since 2005, 2006. Most of the people that I train are women. It's a high degree of women, especially in the sport. And why? And this is the answer that I got from a lot of women. And it's easier for me to convince a woman to stand in one spot and keep moving, because while she's doing it, she can think of 5 different things in her head. For a man, it's hard to convince him to stand there for more than a minute and keep moving, because he's used to pumping out 8 to 10 reps, putting the weight down, getting a drink of water, coming back. He's not used to constantly moving. I don't know why it works that way, but that's the way it works. And so, yeah, women they can stand there and they can just keep moving. So,
interesting.
Have you found that in your gym?
Yeah, it's funny actually. We used to have a lot of women,
right?
But it recently changed.
Okay.
Since we've started advertising a little bit differently, even not differently. We now just advertise differently between the genders. So one advertisement is for men, and the other advertisement is for women. Online, we've always had 98% men.
Okay.
Online. So YouTube is mostly men, and mostly men in their 40s.
Wow.
Yeah. It's such an interesting. And here's another interesting pattern that I've recognized. Hence, I want to design a new ad for this.
Okay.
We get so many comments from people over 60. Men who share their stories. Some of them are ex-soldiers, veterans.
Okay.
Some of them are just banged up in their joints, not from serious lifting. Some yes, but some just banged up because they never moved. And then we have, fathers who say, I want to be strong for my family, and I finally found something that I can do because I don't want to go to the gym. I think COVID really, really changed the landscape to a certain extent. I think now, even though it reverted back to normal to a certain extent, I think there's still some part left that is completely gone, that says, nah, man, I'm not going back to the gym. But I think, it's different a little bit now. So it's interesting that you know this. But you have to understand, I'm not training athletes. So I don't do kettlebell sport. At least not the competitive idea of it.
Right. That's true. That means that, in your training methodology, your exercises are probably geared for, maybe a minute or 2 minutes, but not much longer than that?
Exactly. I've now devised a training system that is so awesome and so easy to understand. In the first part of the workout, we use a AMSAP method where I have a timer for 6 minutes. Then we do 3 exercises for a designated amount of reps, and it's mostly grinds. And mostly it's a little bit heavier weights. And in the first part of the workout, I always say it's rather geared towards strength and muscle. And then in the second part, we go into a circuit method where we do 3 exercises for 2 minutes straight. Cool. And then it's like, and people love it, by the way. They really love it. Of course, we always say the same thing. We say, hey, everybody can put the kettlebell down if you feel like you have to put it down, rest, take a sip of water, no worries. But then you have some, they move for 6 minutes continuously and they really enjoy it. So then one of our classics is swing, 2 minutes, then clean and jerk, 2 minutes, and then alternating clean and jerk, and then snatch alternating for 2 minutes.
Ah, have you messed around with the reverse half snatch yet?
The half snatch, yeah, where you drop into the rack and then drop
The
into
reverse half snatch.
What's the reverse half snatch?
So I came up with this idea years ago, and it's a great way because people that snatch usually have a problem on the drop. So you basically do a one-arm long cycle jerk with a snatch drop.
Oh, interesting. So clean, rack, jerk, and then drop into the backswing.
Right.
Oh.
So that way you can learn how to drop the bell from the top. Most people don't have a problem snatching it. They have a problem coming down.
Yeah, amortization when it comes down. Yes.
What other exercise can you get from the top coming down other than the snatch? So if you do clean and jerk first and then add the drop.
Oh, that's great.
So one of my students said, you know what that is? That's a half snatch if you reverse it. I went, what? And it is.
Yeah, it is a reverse half snatch.
Half snatch.
Awesome, because what I like about the half snatch is you can only focus on the way up. And then rack and backswing and on your way up. So you can only focus on one part of the snatch. But I always missed the idea or a concept where you can focus on the downward face.
Right.
So obvious. So obvious.
See how it works, but it's a really cool exercise.
Cool idea. Yeah.
That drop is that important.
Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. And taking it back to the past where you were a RKC instructor.
Sure.
Did you meet Pavel, and what happened with Strong First? Were you involved, and who did you meet? Who were the guys? You know, Steve Carter is my sensei. I've gotten to know Dan John as well. So how was that? You got any war stories that our folks are interested in?
I started, I believe it was 2003, and there was an original group of guys that were their top instructors. Steve Cotter, Mike Mahler, Morrison. I know Dave Whitley was in there. I'm not sure if Mark Rifkin was one of the original six. Trying to think of the other guys. And Steve Maxwell.
Yeah.
But after about 9 months, all of those top six, they left. And that was the thing that got me. I was like, why would they leave? I know Mike Mahler went on to do his own thing. Have you met Mike Mahler?
I follow him on Instagram, and I have to reach out to ask him for a conversation. Yeah.
Brilliant guy. Really, really cool guy.
Is he still into kettlebells? Because what I see on his Instagram, he's just lifting weights, training, but haven't seen some.
I still think he does some swings and things. So he's still. But Steve obviously went on to create the IKFF. But they all went their own way, and that was kind of discouraging to me because they were all like my peers, and I wanted to be like them. And they disappeared, and I really didn't have anyone to follow. Obviously, Pavel was the top guy, but then Valeri came around, and that was the deal right there. When I saw the sport thing, I got so excited. But all of those guys still exist to this day. Oh, Jeff Martone.
Jeff Martone, yes, he went into CrossFit, yeah.
Yeah, he did, but he designed his own hand-to-hand exercises where he did all release moves and juggling basically with the hardstyle bell. Did you know that?
I know that Jeff Martone was very influential in the early days of juggling, at least not the Russian way, at least, yeah.
And then he also went on to like a shot put. He went out and got shot puts and started doing shot put exercises that were kind of kettlebell related.
Cool.
Yeah, and he created his own stuff there too. And then he got into the sport. I believe he did achieve either a CMS or an MS. And then now I know he helps CrossFitters out with technique. But
yes, he
if
does.
We had more, we had more kettlebell sport people out there that would be willing to change the technique of CrossFitters, we'd see a lot better performance out of CrossFitters with kettlebells. But you don't see it much.
Yeah, now it's I think it always depends on the how do I say this? It's always a matter of the generations, right? It's if a different generation comes up who is not really interested. I mean, and that's another take that we can talk about and have a discussion about. The current idea of kettlebells is now moving a little bit towards this idea of flows. One thing that I'm a huge proponent of just combining both ideas. That's why I love this hybrid idea,
right.
even though I really stopped using the word style because I think it's intent. Right. I'm really taking this idea. Just depends on what you want to do. Then of course the biomechanics of the exercise change depending on your goal. But what's your take on flows and juggling and all that stuff?
Different strokes for different folks. I used to be kind of closed-minded at the beginning, and I thought people just needed to just stick with one thing. But not everyone's like that. You have to respect that. If somebody wants to do a flow, let them do the flow and let them take it as far as they want. And you can see a lot of people are starting to do flows now, and I would love to see kids do flows. As a matter of fact, I want to get a bunch of kids to learn a flow and not tell anyone, and then just have them perform it and have them freak everybody out.
Awesome.
I think that'd be so cool. 6-10 kids all doing a kettlebell flow.
Yeah.
And that would turn everybody on, but I got to go find some kids to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, one thing that can be a critique point or criticism of flows is that you're just, maybe mismatching some weights or mismatching the exercises where for example, you do a heavy squat and then you go into a press and then it's too heavy, then you have to switch it, or you don't really, you give your body some stimulus, but it's just, you get where I'm coming from? It's if we do six presses per side, we have a solid workload, so to speak. But if we just start moving the kettlebell in different shapes and forms, of course your body will react to it, but it's not the traditional way, right? But of course, I love how you say it, right? It's let them be open and then do however they want to do it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would love to see someone just leave a kettlebell in the back of your car, go to the park, get out there, do some juggling, do a clean and a jerk, and then a front flip, and then a clean and a jerk and a front flip, and go back and forth and play with that and add the two together like your hybrid kind of exercises. Mm-hmm. All just having fun, because when you're doing exercises like that, you also forget that you actually are strength training. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it makes it fun. And if it's not fun, you're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the best ways to promote exercises. You've got to make it fun.
Yes.
Otherwise, people are not going to come back if it's not any fun.
Yep, you have to stick to it. That's one big point. And another critique point that I hear a lot from other coaches is that it's not as applicable with a group of clients, with just, let's say, normal people, not Instagram influencers, who come together to do a choreography or whatever. Just normal people, because it's just too overwhelming. I mean, we work with people, and that's what I love about the job that I do, because we teach kettlebells to absolute beginners who never touched any weights in their life.
And I love that.
And and then it's, for some people, a deadlift takes ages because they do not understand the hinge, and they are not used to extending the spine or just keeping it locked. Mm-hmm. And then you have to work on these ultimate basics. And funny thing is, we have some people who are kinesthetically gifted. What I say, they have improved or increased kinesthetic literacy. These people exist, but most of the time, people just have a hard time grasping the concept of a deadlift. And then let's take it a step further, a clean, a swing. Right. And so that's why I get the critique point that maybe flows are not as well or as perfectly suited for normal people who want to get the most out of the time. You're mentioning fun, which is an important part, but also I also like to make this distinction that fun can be cool, but you also want to think about getting a lot of return on investment from your time that you're investing. So I think it has to be a balance somehow. But I get it. I mean, I love juggling. I think it's cool. Even though I stopped, I now focus on the basics again. But yeah, it can be cool, but rather advanced. That's just my humble opinion in that regard.
Exactly. Great stuff.
And what do you think about these, with kettlebell sport, right? We have, obviously, that's something that we've talked about on Instagram. You've shared that all these names with me. For example, and I can't remember, I think her name was a woman, and she was referenced to me not only by yourself, I think she was also referenced to me by a couple of guys that I've had conversations with from Australia.
Okay.
And I couldn't find her. You've mentioned the Ice Chamber girls. I tried to track them down, and some of them, I'm not sure if these are the ones. I think, Brittany French-Ravendijk, I don't know how active she is today. But why do you think, we've talked about this on Instagram, why do you think that some people who were very critical in their early beginnings of this exposure of kettlebell training to the West, that they now have completely disappeared to a certain extent?
Being a sport, they got involved and they achieved what they wanted to achieve, whether it's a CMS or an MS. And they took their competition as far as they wanted with themselves, and that was it. That's as far as they wanted to take it. I know that Steve did close down his gym, which was the Ice Chamber, but to this day, I still feel like he produced the absolute best kettlebell sport athletes in that time. I think he created 8, 10 plus master of sport.
Wow.
Lifters, and they were all amazing. Very, very good. I know they're still involved in the fitness world, but just not in the kettlebell sport world anymore. I mean, they got what they wanted out of it. In terms of my case, I'm not a master of sport. I've been around a really long time. I know how to teach it and coach it to a certain degree. I'm still studying on how to create better athletes. But that's where I am right now. Is I need to find a way to get more kids to do this so we can grow the community bigger. We have a tendency to recruit generally adults somewhere in between 30 and 55.
Yeah.
They get involved in the sport, and I'm not saying that they can't become a CMS or an MS, but had they started at a younger age, it'd be a lot easier to do. Those basic skills would have been there. Just like Little League. So that's my intent. Is I've got to develop something nationwide with kettlebells for kids and let that take its course.
Yeah, which is,
who knows how long it will take.
And before we jump on your experience and what happened to the Kettlebell Sanctuary where you were teaching kids, why do you think? What was his name? What was his last name? Steve from the Ice Chamber girls?
I think it's Kwong or Kong. Khoung. Stephen Kong.
Yes. And I think I tried to track him down as well, and I couldn't find him. Or at least I found somebody, and I wasn't sure if it was him.
He's a brilliant guy. Brilliant.
Cool. And yeah, that's why I have to have conversations with these folks. So my question is, Moses, why do you think these gyms had to close down?
Well, being in the Bay Area, I'm sure his overhead was very high. It's very expensive. And the facility he had, it was probably costing him a lot of money. And then, it's not just kettlebells that was in there. He had everything in there. And that's a tough business. A gym business in the Bay Area. Very, very expensive. So I think that's what it was. Plus the fact that he created his own software for schools, kind of like I don't know if I'm not sure what the software you use for your gym, whether it's MindBody or Jackrabbit, or what do you use for your system?
Verdua Gym.
Okay, he created his own system.
Cool.
That's for schools and things of that nature, and that's where he is now. It's a company called Cubby.
So we transitioned then, or was he doing? He was doing this all along alongside his.
I don't think so. I think it would just happen by mistake. He has a son that's a special needs boy, and he went to some school and found that their system wasn't very good. So he just went ahead and created his own system. And now, yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
he's an entrepreneur.
Cool. Yeah, businesses, they arise out of the pains of today's society, and then we need solutions. Awesome story. So, what about the Kettlebell Sanctuary? I know that, and I have to show this for those who are watching. Let me just pick one up. I'm proud of these. I'm so proud of these, Moses. And just to make it clear, Moses sent me these. These are kettlebells for kids, and you can also see his logo, which I think you also inspired me to create my own kettlebell. So
You should. Yeah.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. When I mean, I've had conversations with a couple of folks who are very entrepreneurial with their ideas, and then Moses creates his own kettlebells. Sean creates his own kettlebells. Of course, the cast iron stuff, Pavel. So I thought, you know what? When these guys can do it, why can't I do it, right?
Well,
So
in your case, you're out there in Europe, and I think, I don't know who manufactures yours, but to go all the way from one area to another, maybe you found a better manufacturer that's closer and it makes more sense. So I don't know where you're manufacturing them, but yeah.
oh, I meant in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found a supplier. It's funny. It's a funny story, actually. I wanted to work with a supplier that I've been working with, a German supplier, for a long time. So I've contacted them a couple of times. And I always told them, listen, I want to create my own kettlebells, and then maybe you can do the fulfillment, and we can use our leverage maybe to sell some kettlebells. And then they were kind of a little bit, first they were disinterested, then they showed some interest, and I had a conversation with their manager, with their marketing manager, I think. And then he said something like, well, you have to invest at least 15,000 Swiss francs or euros to get started, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, nah, man, not in today's world. China opened up to small businesses all around the world because they know that small businesses generate a lot of money for them too.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? Let's stop this. Then I found another supplier from Austria, from another neighboring country, and the same situation. It's like, yeah, you need to buy at least 5 tons. I was like, hey man, I just want to try it out. And I was like, I felt like maybe they don't want to cooperate. So one day, out of the blue, I get a message from a Chinese supplier like, hey, you want to buy kettlebells? And I was like, hey, you really? I was like, hey, you guys produce hollow car competition kettlebells? She sent me images, and that was the story. And now we have a second, but we've ordered the second batch now. We ordered another 100 kettlebells from them. And yeah, it's going great. But I have to mention one thing. I'm really looking for a supplier in the US. Because
hard to do.
Not a supplier, a somebody who's interested in buying our kettlebells in bulk, or not even just buying them in bulk. Maybe just somebody who's interested in housing them, fulfilling them over our service, because then it goes way faster. Because now we work with DHL, and even though we include the price in the kettlebell, we had to drop our margins by a long shot to make it possible to even purchase kettlebells, because sending kettlebells with these weights from Switzerland all around the world, or at least to the US with DHL, is so expensive. But we tried another carrier, with our local carrier, and it was atrocious. Kettlebells were broken, they didn't arrive, or they got lost at customs. My God, so we had to pivot.
What kind of handle you got? 35, 33, 32?
35.
35?
Yeah.
My suggestion is you're going to need to make a bunch that are more around the 33. Yeah.
Why do you think so? Yeah.
Not everyone has a big hand.
Yeah, I see that.
Especially women. And you will find that they have a smaller hand and they can't really wrap all the way around when it comes to snatching. And that little 2 millimeter difference is actually huge. So it's just a suggestion. I think
I get that, and it's noted most definitely. At the same time, we don't do sport in a particular sense, so they can manage to work with with that size. But give us your story about the Kettlebell Sanctuary.
How did I start that? I have been doing some kettlebell classes that were really sport oriented out of a yoga fitness studio. And this was at the very beginning. And one of my students in there said that we should just do our own gym. And my mind was never in that direction. But we did. And we weren't highly successful, but we created a really lot of good lifters. That's what we did. And that was my intent, is I just wanted to create really, really good lifters. I wish I could be a little bit more business savvy and I would have had more clients for the money, but it wasn't about the money. It was about, I just really wanted to create really good lifters. And that's what we did. So on a monetary level, we weren't highly successful, but again, I created what I wanted to create. And I still want to do that. So I know some people have told me you need to do a lot of online things, but I'm so much of a hands-on guy. I'd rather be in front of a person, putting them in position. But I'm going to start doing some online things where I get to help. I know you have an online thing as well, and it's very successful. But
we have a course system. But here's the deal. The reason why I came up with the course system was because of the pandemic. Yes.
Right.
And here's what it does. It enables me to help way more people all around the world for a price that is, let's say, like I've stopped saying it's about the price. It's about the value that people that people consider your product, and if the value matches the pains that they have, that they want to have a solution for, then it's not about the price. It's all about value. But it enables me to reach a larger audience. Yes, that's it. But at the same time, I still think you can be incredibly and highly successful running a gym without the online stuff. Even though I think in today's world, I would agree that you need online to a certain extent. It's what they now they call it hybrid businesses. People who are brick and mortar and online. But at the same time, here's what I read this book. I got this book yesterday. This one.
Like crazy. I think I have that book.
Oh, Sabri Subi. Guy's an Australian marketing genius. I got it yesterday, and I read it through. It came in the mail yesterday evening, and I read the whole book in almost less than one day. And here's one thing that really strikes me, what Sabri says, and I heard this so many times when it comes to business, and that is, if you are the owner or the founder, you have to be a very good salesman. It's just not. I like what you're saying. It's all about you wanted to create good lifters. That's what you did. But at the end of the day, if the monetary doesn't work, you have to close down.
True. And that's
right. And you mentioned this before we started the recording, right? That's what happened after the pandemic, right? So one thing that. Yep. Keep going.
Have you learned about this guy, Myron Golden? I'm big on that guy right now. All I can tell you is go online and go study all of his stuff. That guy is amazing.
Myron Golden?
Golden.
Myron Golden.
Myron Golden.
Let me check that guy.
Myron Golden. That is the man. I can say that. Myron Golden, you are the man.
Let me see. What is with... Oh, here we are. Yeah. Speaking, sales. Yeah. And Russell Brunson. Yes, it's all these marketing folks. Yeah. It's, at the end of the day, what really strikes me is the understanding that if you're not good at creating ads, creating good offers, creating or having a very effective sales process, you probably will either get by or you will be out of business. And that's such a harsh truth to realize. But when you're running a business and you're not good at this, maybe you have to hire somebody who is. But at the end of the day, it is the lifeblood of the business. And I've realized this. I've started implementing some of the strategies, and I've seen tremendous success. But it's still, it's not something that I like doing. I like the entrepreneurial stuff, but I also like coaching. So I think I'm just dancing on two weddings at the same time.
You know, I absolutely love traveling and going to gyms and doing workshops and clinics and helping people start little kettlebell teams. And I had one coach who is probably going to be one of the better coaches, if not the best coach in the U.S. in kettlebells in the future. And he said to me, Moses, you have a wonderful path for giving, but you don't have a path for receiving.
Oh.
That hit me. I went,
wow.
He says, yeah, you need to have a path for receiving. And so I'm trying to do that.
Yeah. That's very eloquently put. Wow. Exactly, man.
Right.
And I think a lot of trainers and coaches suffer from this.
Right.
It is what it is. Wow, that's a good one. And you know, isn't it oftentimes the fact that people, or just coaches or people in general, they think, well, I can't be too salesy.
Right.
But you have to be, just in a good sense. You have to just add value as much as you can. And then if the person's interested, make it as easy as possible to do business with you, and then state your price and don't discount it.
Right.
Stand strong on it. And then, do some ads, do some great marketing, and there you go. I mean, it's not easy, of course, but it's the truth.
Yeah, that Myron Golden guy is the guy that I think he taught Russell Brunson how to do offers.
Yeah.
When I saw what he was doing, I was like, okay, it's
enlightening,
really
right? Yeah.
It's not sales. He created something that people, they have to have, and he doesn't have to tell them. They'll just, there's a lot of people going in that direction. So go study that man.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's just, I think that's a very interesting part of the conversation, is understanding how well your offer is supposed to be laid out. It took me a lot of time to realize this. But the offer is, I love how they say it. They say you can have atrocious ads and a great offer, and you will make it. But you can have the best ads and an atrocious offer, you won't make it.
Won't make it.
Yeah. Wow. Hmm? So with the Kettlebell Sanctuary, what happened? Was it COVID and then things shut down and
pretty much. Yeah, that kind of killed it there. But for what I want to do, I really want to travel. I every other week I want to be in some city doing clinics and workshops and promoting the sport. That's where my heart is. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I love to go to a fitness facility and train people and put them through classes. But for me, I need to be out there promoting it and getting and building it. Mm-hmm. That's really where I am right now. So wherever I can go in the United States or outside to do clinics and workshops, and I'll brag on myself a little bit, I think I'm the best at what I do and how I do it. And I can get people inside of 2 hours to understand kettlebell sport lifting better than anything. I think I'm that good.
Awesome. Yeah, because it's a different thing, right? Teaching a class just for training, and then teaching kettlebells for the sake of kettlebells. It's two different beasts, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally two different things. But I was trained as a gymnast. I was trained in basics, and I just absolutely love basic skills because they lead to the highest possible level. And without that understanding of that specific basic skill, you're limited. You can't go to the top. Now, I want everyone to be a winner and a champion. And there's only one way you can do that, is you have to have a very high level of technique. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very technique driven. I make sure they're never out of position. So, and I've heard this from other people. They'll say like, I know who you train. They can see my athletes and they say, I know you train.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where I feel good, because I want people to go like, when they see someone.
It's a signature. Yeah.
He doesn't really train the sport anymore in that way that he did. But I knew who he trained when I saw what they were doing. And in the gymnastics world, way back when I was a competitive gymnast, I could look at certain athletes and I knew who coached them in the United States.
Yep.
Just based on the way they move. I knew where they came from, and I see the movement, and that's exactly what I want to do with kettlebells. I want to make sure that anytime any of my athletes are doing a movement, everyone will see it and go like, that's the way you should do it.
Awesome. Here's what I think about going out there being solely focused on kettlebell sport. I think, because I've seen as an experience now, when we focused on what people want, and let's talk about just regular people who have enough money to pay you.
Right.
They want to get in shape. They want to lose weight. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to get back into their gyms. They want to jeans. They want to feel healthy. They want to look good. They want to look strong. They want to be there for their family. So all these factors, that's what the core desires of our audience is. So I've realized when I steered away from these desires, the sales went down.
Yes.
So the reason why I share this is, and after we pivoted back, the sales went up. Okay. So it's just, I think it's maybe a conundrum. How can you make it profitable to run a kettlebell sport only gym, or being solely focused on what you're trying to accomplish? And I wish you Godspeed on that journey. I hope it pans out. But how do you make it, right? So that, because it doesn't, here's the thing. Of course, with kettlebell sport, you can look leaner. It's fantastic for your health. It's fantastic for your heart rate. You burn fat, and it's awesome.
Right.
But the barrier to entry is so high, or at least, especially if you want to compete, is so high. So that's why I'm not really sure if there's a huge market for this demand. You get what I'm saying? So what's your take on this? Do you think it's possible to really make it on kettlebell sport only? Because I've talked to a coach from the UK who is highly focused on kettlebell sport. And
Steven?
Then again?
Steven?
Yeah, Steve.
He's a great guy.
Steve.
Love that.
He's awesome. Learned a lot of good stuff from this man. Yeah. He's awesome. Two Nova kettlebell training. So shout out to Steve. But he also shared that he's also coaching kids, and I like his idea, family training.
Right.
I think you did this too, right?
Yes. That the whole idea was to get adults and children to train together. If there's a family, that just creates more of a family bond. And that's how you strengthen the family in America. You've got to get them together exercising. That was one of the motives as well.
And there's a huge market, right?
Yeah, most
definitely.
If you look at gymnastics gyms for young kids, there's always a class called Mommy and Me.
Oh,
where they
Mommy
have
and Me.
a little toddler and a mother or a father, and they're doing stretching together, and Mommy and Me. And so I went, you know what? Kettlebells needs a Mommy and Me, or a Daddy and Me.
Yeah. And how was the percentage wise? How much adults signed up with their kids in your gym?
Again, not a lot. We just got by. Maybe it's just because I probably didn't advertise it as much as I should have, but it was all word of mouth. People would tell other people, "Oh yeah, I go to this gym with my kid and give it a try." So it was always word of mouth.
Which is still one of the most powerful recommendations that you can get, because they walk into your gym with so much trust that it's easy to close them, right? But we were running on word of mouth for, I said, like at least 6 years. I'm operating the gym now in my 7th year, and this was the first year I realized something's off.
Okay.
So that's why I started switching and speeding up my marketing game.
Right.
And funny thing is, you said it yourself, maybe you didn't advertise it, right? Because what I'm now realizing as well is, and that's what these marketers say, and it's so true, it's you can't wait for folks to walk into your gym and buy your services. You have to create demand. If there is a big enough market that is continuously growing and that is interested in your services, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I remember this way back when a popular fitness thing here in the United States was called Family Fitness, and then after many years, it's changed its name to 24-Hour Fitness. I don't know if that.
Yeah, 24-Hour Fitness, of course. Yeah, I know that name.
If you ever went to that gym, you would see that they had a separate room for kids, kind of like a childcare area, because they wouldn't let kids work out, and I always felt like that was wrong. Mm-hmm. I felt like if you're going to have a gym, you should have the kids be able to exercise with you. Yes. And that's, I always think of bring the family together, get them to do the same thing. Little Joey can have a 2 kilo and dad can have a 16 kilo, and you can do the exact same moves, whether they're deadlifts or 2-hand swings or you name it. And I've been seeking out a lot of hard stylers, and I asked them, do they have any kids? And then I would gift a bunch of kettlebells. I would send them. And so I get all these videos back of some guys looking in the garage, and this little boy's over there moving the kettlebell, and the guy is overjoyed because his boy is working out. Yeah. And I love that. That's what I live for. For
awesome.
some man, my son went over there and did this all by himself. I didn't have to tell him. Or my daughter did that. And that excites me.
And we have a lot of parents here too, and they share this with us, that they say, our kids start working out with us, or they want to grab the weights, and I'm like, you know what? Because you're a role model, they just, right? They're cameras on 2 legs. They just do what you do.
Absolutely.
And if you do the bad things, we just had a conversation with Angie. We talked about it. So if you are, because I don't know, what's your experience in nutrition? Did they ask you about nutrition, and did you coach folks in nutrition?
Not very much.
Okay.
But I know it's important for you to drink water, eat healthy,
Eat your veggies and stuff. Yeah. It's the basics, right?
Put more protein in your system, try to stay with your carbohydrates, or go with your simple carbohydrates as opposed to, or complex carbohydrates better. Yeah.
So here's the conversations that we sometimes have with parents when it comes to nutrition. They say, well, if you have kids, it's just different. And I say, why? They say, well, they want to eat different things. And I'm always like, I'm not sure if that's true. And he's like, well, you don't have any kids. I was like, yeah, but I was a kid once too. And I couldn't just walk into the store and buy stuff that I wanted. Because first of all, I had no money. And second of all, I had to eat what was on the plate.
Right.
I mean, maybe, education changed a little bit. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's interesting how parents share their experience. Well, the kid wants to eat differently. And then sometimes I think to myself, maybe you are shifting the responsibility to your kid instead of on yourself. Because what is probably rather happening is the bad habits that you are displaying are now copied by your kid.
They're going to do what you do.
That's it, right? That's it.
I mean, everything. Even the things that you think that they're not going to do, they're going to do it. You don't even have to tell them. What you do is what they're going to do.
Amen.
Their voice is the same. I mean, they're listening to your voice. That's why you get on the phone and you listen to certain people, and it's like, that guy sounds like his dad. It's same vocal tone. Everything is the same.
Exactly.
They're going to do what you do. So if you don't do it, they're not going to do it.
That's it. So that's where it comes from. That's why I think it's so awesome when people grab their weights, and I'm like, you're going to be a role model for your kid, man. They're going to see it, and they want to replicate it because they see you do it, which is so awesome when you train with kettlebells at home.
Have you seen any videos or pictures of Valeri's son?
No.
Yeah, that kid's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm assuming you will be. Of
It's
course.
gonna be.
Yeah, but yeah, that's just the plain truth, right? It's what you are. It's what you display is what your kid will do.
Hmm?
Yeah, it is what it is.
What is it? Monkey see, monkey do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and funny thing, even with coaching, sometimes what we do is we don't do a lot of touching, and especially since I'm a man and we have female clients, I shy away from touching. Sometimes
Right.
I really very soft just to make sure that sometimes they don't understand it. So what I want to always try to achieve is help them understand it by my oratory skills
Right.
and by demonstrating it. So what I sometimes realize is just by demonstrating, they understand it way better, and then we move with them, and then they understand. I see, you just have to copy what I do, and
Right.
then that's why they understand it. But here's one important point that I want you to share your expertise on,
Sure.
because people are hesitant to let their children train because of this myth that is still going around that weight training is bad for kids.
Hmm?
What's your experience?
Let's see. I think in several cultures they have these stories. You've probably heard them as well. I think it's in Greek. Where is it? Milo? Is that the name of
Yeah,
the guy?
the guy who was carrying on the calf, and then it was a bull at the end.
Right? That one started as a young boy in Japan. As a samurai had a son, and he planted a tree, and every day the boy would jump over this tree. And as the tree grew, the kid was jumping 10, 15 feet over this tree, but he did it every day. Kind of a similar thing. But again, kids will do what the parents do. So if you're not physically active, how are you going to get your kid to be physically active? You need to be the role model. So that's the best part about with adults that have children. They come into the gym, or I'll work with them, and I say, you can get your kid to do that too. There's a bell just for them. There you go. But yeah, it's true. There's why we've been indoctrinated into this. Yeah, kids shouldn't be exercising. But, the best athletes usually come off of some farm in the United States. Kids that grow up on a farm where they're used to picking up things and moving around at a young age.
Good point.
Think about that. I mean, how many kids grow up on a farm and pick up bales of hay and move dirt and just move stuff around? They're good with their hands. Very few kids do it. Nowadays, kids just go right to the computer and press a button.
Oh, the smartphones.
Got to get them away from the computer, and I got to put a bell in their hand. Even if it's 30 minutes a day, it's worth it to me to know that I got that kid off the couch. You know?
Yeah, because we already see this, right? We see that the obesity epidemic, this is the real pandemic, right?
It's really horrible.
And in kids, I think the U.S. is different than Europe, but I mean, whatever's happening in the U.S. catches up in Europe. It's always the same, but I think it's pretty severe with what's happening with adults. I think I've heard something in 2030 in the U.S. It's like every second person will be overweight, or something like this.
Yeah.
So we are on this very sad trajectory, right? And sometimes, you know, what's your take? Sometimes I think it's almost, I mean, this of course doesn't stop me from promoting it and keeping and doing what I do, but it sometimes looks like an uphill battle to me where we are.
I will tell you a story that was one of the saddest stories ever. I had a woman come into my gym. She was taking class, and then I asked her if she had any children. And she said, yeah, I have a boy and a girl. I said, bring them in here. Let me work with them, right? I think her boy was definitely overweight. He was probably 9 or 10 years old. And I have jump ropes, and I do things with them just to test reflexes. And I had a ball. And I threw it at him, and I said, catch. It hit him on the chest, and it dropped down to the ground. So I did it again. He didn't catch it. He had never been taught to catch a ball ever in his life.
Wow.
And I almost cried because how does a boy not learn how to play catch? No one ever bothered playing catch. He's on his computer all the time. He'd never learned to catch a ball. That was horrible. And I would never want to see any kid not be able to do physical things like that, as simple as catching a ball. I'd never seen that before. And that's the direction we're going. We have kids that are growing up that have no physical movement. Yeah.
And did you see similar stories like this in your experience with kids?
Just that one, but that was tragic to know that the kid had never learned to catch anything. Yeah. He grew up next to a TV or a video monitor, and I think he got a blister on his thumb from playing a game. You know, from touching the button. Come on.
But
I don't know if he run down the street or even chased a dog before, but yeah.
But see, it's right. The problem is if nobody's teaching it
right
to him or to her, what do you want to do? It's like I've had this conversation with my parents today, and I was like, yes, it's with the smartphone era, with TikTok and with social media and kids now getting handed an iPhone with 8 years of age, where they are in no, at least that's my perspective, where they are in no way capable of being able to handle these things because we can't even handle it.
Right.
I mean, I'm really diligently working on bringing down this screen time because it's such Instagram, Facebook, and my YouTube analytics as a YouTuber. These are time-sucking vampires.
Right.
And they want you to stay on the platform. So the algorithm does everything to keep you on the platform because this is what leads to more advertiser money. I get it, but it's actually just it's a bad situation at the end of the day. So I told my mother, I was like, but why are we even criticizing the next generation when it's the older folks who are responsible for handing the tools down to them, right?
Yeah. How
are they supposed to get an iPhone? Or how are they supposed to get in touch with that stuff? And, you know, I hear this a lot. It's like, you know, my 9-year-old got an iPhone. I'm like, why? So, you know, when they're out and about and mother wants to call them, I was like, man, we didn't have this.
No.
We were out and about, and then we came back when we had to.
Right.
But maybe I'm too old-fashioned. I don't know.
Come home behind sundown, you know.
That's it?
That's it. Yeah. You're in the backyard drinking out of the water hose and getting all dirty and scraping up your knee and falling and playing with your friends. You know, that was it. But we need kids to be more physically active, but that's the problem right now. Is also the physical education is horrible. I think in high school it's just an elective now. I don't think it's required.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is horrible.
Interesting.
And in all schools, the physical education is now CrossFit. Did you know that?
Say that again?
Yeah, they put CrossFit in high schools.
Well,
Which isn't horrible.
It isn't horrible. Barbells and kettlebells is in CrossFit. It's cool, and dumbbells, but yeah. What's your take on CrossFit? Honest
I've seen it at the very beginning. When I saw it at the very beginning, I saw these women do muscle ups and heavy cleans with the barbell. I think they're doing a workout called Karen, and I got excited about that. But what I don't like is a bunch of these exercises that aren't true pull-ups or aren't true muscle-ups. They're really, if they're gymnastics movements called front uprises. And you have to remember it's however you can get your chin over the bar is acceptable.
Yeah.
I'll give a real quick explanation. In gymnastics, there's swinging elements, and obviously straight pull-ups where the chin has to go over the bar, and kipping exercises.
Yeah.
But if you look at gymnastics equipment, the metal bar and the women's bar, they're all reflex. So there's a bottoming of it.
So they
But
bend a
also-
little bit?
Oh yeah,
Ah.
that bar bends.
Ah, okay.
So
Didn't know that.
But all these other exercises out there that are CrossFit, those are bars that don't bend. And so they're yanking down at the bottom, and your shoulder is just getting pulled out of the socket. So that's where getting a lot of these, what they call slap tears. So if CrossFit would change their equipment to reflex bars, I think we would see a lot less injuries to the shoulders.
Mhm.
But butterfly pull-ups and these kipping pull-ups are just wreaking havoc on shoulder joints because you are yanking your body at the bottom of the bar, and that bar is not bending.
Mhm.
So that's my beef with that.
So there's always this element of inertia that really rips your shoulder in half as soon as you drop down, right? Ah.
Absolutely.
Wow,
And
I didn't know. I didn't know about the reflex bar. So that it actually allows you to.
It bends. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. Yeah.
That's where you see these crazy gymnastic skills now because the bar reflexes and they're able to fly so much higher.
And we have to mention this at this point. It's gymnastics folks are next to weightlifters the strongest folks that exist. I mean, when you see, the Iron Cross, or
Yeah.
I think I saw a demonstration from a Chinese guy, and it's mind bending.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's this exercise where he's in this T pose or the cross, but he's in a planche, right? On rings.
Yes.
And the rings do not move. They stay. It's like he's attached to a rope, an invisible rope, and then he moves around. The amount of tension is incredible.
Mind-blowing.
It's so fascinating what the human body can do if you train it properly like this. So that's why I consider always weightlifting and gymnastics, calisthenics to a certain extent. This is pure strength.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. I mean, we always talk about strongmen, right? I mean, they do strong feats, right? From the circus, this is where the stuff originated, which I think is awesome. Yes, and you have big bears doing that. Yeah, it's cool. But when it comes to truth, let's say like ratio strength, you have a Li Xiaoyan, right? The weightlifter. What is he? 80 kilograms, and he lifts 160 or 70 kilogram clean and jerk.
That's like 400 pounds head. It's insane.
This is unfathomable when you see what they do and you know what these weights feel like. And I follow a couple of weightlifting sites on Instagram pages, and when they post a lift, they always show the super slow motion afterwards.
Right.
And you see the efficient bar path that these folks move the weights in. So the bar comes up, and then once it lands around here, the bar then is like frozen in the air, and then they swing around the bar to go into the snatch, or the bottom position of the snatch and the squat, right? And then they come up. This is so fascinating to watch.
It's interesting when you look at that type of weightlifting. The idea is it's pretty much a straight line. That bar's got to go straight up. So the bar is basically moving on a straight line, and the body's moving out of the way.
Exactly.
We compensate for that movement. We have to get in and out in time. Same with kettlebells. And technically, we're trying to go straight up, and we're getting the body out of the way and getting back underneath it.
Exactly.
Right. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible.
We move around the weights, not the weights around us. And
exactly.
it's so good that you mentioned this point, because I want to get your take on this. So in hardstyle, and while I like, just to make this disclaimer, I like the grinds. I like all of them. But when it comes to the ballistics, making an exercise intentionally making an exercise inefficient on an intentional basis just doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make sense.
And it doesn't make sense from one single perspective. When you watch a deadlift, a clean, a snatch, weightlifting, or even powerlifting, you always have to follow the most efficient bar path in order not to create unnecessary effort. That's just a plain fact. And
Right.
I've even talked to a physicist, and he said there is a law in physics that a physical system is always striving to achieve a motionless state, or a state that doesn't create or require a lot of effort. So for example, he said,
Right.
you have a ball, the ball rolls down into the valley because its gravity pulls it down, and because the ball has to react because it wants to go into this motionless state. So from all these disciplines, weightlifting, powerlifting, we understand we have to follow an efficient bar path. Why do we think that with kettlebells, it's a different thing? I don't get it. I simply don't get it.
Not in kettlebell sport.
Yes. And funny thing, has nothing to do with the sport. It just has to do with the efficient movement of the weight. And then I always hear the same reply. They say, well, we do it for strength. And then I always say the same thing. If you want to train explosive strength, and you watch what the Soviets were doing, they were doing depth jumps.
Right.
And explosive exercises where the muscle reacts quickly and boom, like this.
Right.
And I talked to a biomechanics, and I asked him about the swing, whether a swing is an explosive exercise. He says no. I said why? He says because in order for an exercise to be explosive, it has to be under 0.15 seconds between relaxation and tension. That's incredibly fast.
Yeah, super fast.
Super fast, right? And this doesn't happen with the inertia of the kettlebell in the backswing. It's just impossible. You cannot be that fast. So I don't get it from that perspective. And then what I also hear is, well, you see that these guys are then stronger. And my question would be, okay, let's have a Alexander Krostov or a Markov, or the younger guys, right? I mean, I saw Krostov snatch a 48 kg.
Yeah.
With ease.
With ease.
50 reps, something. Are you crazy?
Yep.
48. You know how heavy this is? And this guy's like my body weight.
Right.
So let's have like a Krostov, and then we have another guy who's just doing, let's say, like hardstyle only. And then at the end, we want to see who's stronger. I don't think that there will be a difference. The snatch is a full body exercise. We don't have the explosive element because it's not in beneath 0.15 seconds. So I don't see the benefit. And I'm not trying to down talk it. I'm not trying to talk down on it. I always say I'm on a quest for truth. And I don't see the application. And I've talked to hardstyle guys, they couldn't give it to me. So I'm still looking for an explanation as to why they think it makes sense to make an exercise inefficient. Because if that's the truth, that this will make you stronger, then I would suggest that you start deadlifting with the bar outside your center of mass. Because it creates more effort.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But it's unnecessary effort, right? So what's your take? It was a long talk, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I remember going all the way back to the beginning with Pavel, and I remember his question was, do you want to get stronger or do you want to lift more weight?
What's the difference?
How do I best way to do using technique, you can lift more weight, but that doesn't necessarily mean
that you're stronger? Of course it does mean you're stronger, doesn't it? Lu Xiaoyun has the best technique. The guy's strong as hell.
He is. How do I say that question?
It's an interesting point.
Right.
Interesting point.
I mean, what do you say to the guy that's got all the rippling muscle that looks like Superman, and then a guy that doesn't have any of that can outlift him?
I think it's easy to explain.
Right.
The one guy was focusing on hypertrophy,
Hypertrophy,
right? Which is a completely different beast.
Completely
And
different.
the other guy was focusing on strength.
Right. Trying to get from point A to point B.
Yes.
Right. And we're talking about that explosive speed. Just same thing with gymnasts. They have that explosive. There's explosive speed in there. There's also very slow grinding movements as well.
And I think that's why they look so bulky, right? I mean, they have awesome physiques, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That strength to weight ratio is amazing.
Yeah.
And being able to hold their body in certain positions it's mind blowing. Almost all of range now almost has no swing. It's so much strength related, wow. But it's weird over the years how there's an ebb and flow. You go back to the early 30s and 20s when guys hardly swung at all and did all these strength moves, and then it graduated into swinging concepts with strength, and now it's almost pure strength.
Yeah. So it goes back and forth, huh?
It goes back and forth, but we'll see with that. But yeah, it is amazing right now. They just levitating.
Awesome.
Yeah, it looks like defying gravity.
Yeah, it's crazy. And here's you mentioned a good point. There are grinding exercises in gymnastics, right? You mentioned.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So here's my point why I believe hybrid is, or this hybrid idea is cool, because incorporating the grinds gives you that aesthetic look.
Absolutely.
And makes you strong as well, right?
Right.
But when it comes to the ballistics, you are riding a different horse. It's strength endurance or special endurance. So we don't focus on strength or hypertrophy. We rather focus on a type of endurance that is unique to kettlebell training.
Correct.
Right? So
correct.
Two different beasts. So I get it when somebody tells me, well, but the sport guys look, they look thin. They're not really muscular. Well, because most of them don't do grinds. And if they do grinds, they do it in the GPP and only focused on their sport, right? They don't do GPP for the looks. They do GPP for their sport.
Right.
But back to the question that Pavel was asking, which I think is a great question. Do you want to become stronger or lift more weight? If I am able to lift more weight, of course I have to have good technique. You're right on that point. But I can have the best technique. If I'm not as strong as Lu Xiaoyun, I can never outlift him.
True.
Right?
Good point.
Because I always bring in the weightlifters. It's just because that's where kettlebells come from, right? It was a poor man's sport for weightlifting to a certain extent, right? And this is where the moves come from. The jerk, you see the jerk with kettlebells looks similar to the jerk with a barbell.
True.
And that's why I made a video critiquing the strong first clean and jerk, because it just doesn't make sense at all.
No, hardstyle press doesn't make any sense to me because it doesn't match a regular. Well, that press where the elbow is going laterally doesn't make any sense.
Where it goes away?
Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
I've heard somebody say they call it a scaption press, and you also do it in bodybuilding, right? Where the elbow goes out.
That's to build a muscle. That's to create a shape.
Yeah.
But you're trying to get the weight to go off of your hip straight up. It's straight up, and it's straight back down. There's no point in the elbow going out that way. You're going off the plane. So.
What was the explanation for this? Do you remember it?
I remember that's the question he posed, and that was really, really long time ago.
Okay, yeah. I understand, of course. Yeah.
Great question, though. And
And how did you answer that question?
I didn't. It was, I think that was the question he asked on what someone was intending to do. Do you want to be stronger or do you want to lift more weight? I was like, okay. But I just, that question resonated. It just stayed with me forever.
And how would you answer it now? I mean, does the question even make sense to you?
Not really. I do like how you said, in order to lift weight, you have to be stronger. You have to produce more force to get it there.
Most definitely, right? Even with the best technique. Look at Klokov, the Russian weightlifter. That guy's a monster.
He is a monster. monster.
This guy is next level. And
Yeah.
and are you trying to tell me that and he's also using, I mean, I'm an amateur in barbell and weightlifting. I'm not even an amateur. I don't even do these exercises. I don't do the Oli lifts. But judging from my understanding of biomechanics to a certain extent, Klokov has great technique.
Absolutely.
You can maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And he's also hellish strong.
Very strong. He's very strong. I mean, that guy, I think he's done some standing presses or even not a jerk, but a push press, probably 300 pounds or some insane number like that.
This is...
Yeah. And then a hanging clean where he will stop and then
he'll clean it.
That is amazing. That's superhuman strength to get that weight from there to there.
Exactly.
But he's very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen flexibility?
Yeah.
It's amazing how much weight he can lift, and he's very flexible for a big dude.
See what this is teaching me. I mean, I've had a conversation with Dr. Stuart McGill.
Okay.
And one of the leading spine researchers and spine scientists. And he said, for example, a powerlifter is not very flexible because he doesn't have to be. Because his system is focused on strength. Let's take the other example. You have a ballet or yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. Not very strong, but incredibly flexible because the body adapts to, specific, the side principle, specific adaptations to impose demands, right? And then he shared an example. I love this example. He shared an example of a wood chopper. Okay. He said he was I don't know if he was counseling the guy. I don't know what it was, but he said a wood chopper, a world champion wood chopper.
Okay.
And he said this guy was imbalanced. You couldn't imagine. On one side.
On one side.
Right? And yes, it makes sense. And he said this. He said it made sense for his sport.
Right.
So he was supposed to be imbalanced because, for the sport.
He adapted that.
He adapted, exactly. And now you have Klokov moving massive weights.
Massive weight.
And so he's the yoga and the power lifter in one.
Right.
Which you would say, this is not possible. Yet it is. And same with kettlebell sport, right? You have guys moving 64 kilogram kettlebells, double 32s.
Double 32.
Right? My body weight, 70 or maybe 80 kilograms, for 80 reps, 10 minutes straight.
Yeah.
How impossible is that? But still, the human body adapts to whatever you want it to perform.
Adapts. It absolutely adapts. And you can take this into later age. It's amazing. You could be in your 50s or 60s and still lift a decent amount of weight for a long period of time. You can maintain that strength for a long time. Yeah. What was the one thing I was going to tell you with goodness gracious. Great one. I'll think of it in a minute. Come back to me.
I was talking too much. I'm sorry. Get very passionate about that stuff.
Oh.
I can't stop talking. Oh, you mentioned you got it? Yeah, keep going.
The yoga handstand and the gymnastic handstands are different. In that, in yoga, when you learn a handstand, your intent is to stack the joints on top of each other and just balance. But the gymnastics handstand has to move through high speed and rebounding. And so therefore, they can't relax that position. They have to be in a tighter position because they're moving at high speed upside down, pushing off of different surfaces. So our handstand is a different handstand. It's still a handstand, but it's prepared for rebounding at the highest level.
So I would assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the gymnastics handstand requires more tension.
Absolutely. Although you are relaxed while you're in a tension, you're breathing and relaxed, but your body is tight. Whereas in a yoga handstand, you can even arch if you wanted to and stay in position. It's not the best position to be in, but you could relax there and but you're just supporting your weight upside down for the sake of balancing, not for the sake of using it, but at high speed and lowering in and out of position. So all these other things are going on, like what you were talking about, the men on rings doing exercises and their handstand. And I'm going to send you a videotape. I just got back from Tucson. I went back to my original gym and helped out with the summer camp. And there was a little break going on, and this little boy climbs up to rings, 6 years old, and he does a muscle up all by himself.
Wow.
Nobody helping him. And he just, I don't even know if he knew what he was doing, but most 6-year-old kids cannot do a muscle up.
A muscle up is tough. Most adults can do a muscle up.
Most adults can't do it, but that little boy at the beginning of the day, and then at 5 o'clock at the end of the day, he did it again. But that's an amazing amount of strength for a little boy. Yeah.
And we also have to factor in genetics in that regard, right? You have to have a certain. I love this description from the biomechanics from Dr. Michael Yes's. I've read a couple of books of him now. Had a conversation with him, and I love how he said it. He said, in extreme sports, genetics are vital. So in extreme strength sports or extreme speed sports, as opposed to extreme endurance sports, the fringe. So example would be a sprinter versus a ultra marathon runner.
Sure.
He says genetics are the key to perform well. But he says in the middle, and especially in team sports, it's all about proper coaching, proper training, and that leads to better performance. So good GPP, good SPP, good coaching, good understanding of the biomechanics of the exercises. And he really changed my mind on this. I was really like, I was like, well, athletes just have to do deadlifts, press, and squat. Until I realized, oh, well, no, there's more behind it.
Have you seen that marathoner that he has the record? What is it? That's 26.2 miles, right? And
marathon.
He averaged every mile in less than 5 minutes. I think he ran a marathon in less than 2 hours.
Yeah,
That's
how do you even do this?
That's insane.
The speed.
How the human body can
see, exactly it. That's
for
exactly
20
it.
miles. I mean, there are people there, they could keep up with him for maybe 1 mile, but not for the next 25 miles. That is insane.
That's
how do you can do that?
Yeah. And the speed. I think his running cadence and speed is probably the equivalent of some of us sprinting. Absolutely right.
He went for 26 miles.
My God.
Where this is going to go, I don't know. But the human body is truly amazing. And I think that's the miracle of the human body, what it can do and what the limits are. And there truly aren't. There aren't any limits. You have to develop and adapt to what you're doing, but I don't think there's a limit. Mm-hmm. You're going to see some crazy things again in the future. Is the 100-meter dash, is that going to keep improving?
Mm-hmm. Was like below 9 seconds or something, 9.5 or something.
Where is it? Is it like
9.8 or something?
Oh, it's below 9.8. It's like Usain Bolt went like 9.6 or something. But you have to remember, for years and years, it was like around 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. The guy from Italy, he had the 200 record for the longest time. Pietro Minea. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He ran in horrible shoes, and he broke 20 seconds, I think.
With bad equipment.
Yeah. 60s, yeah.
Yeah, the guy who had 2 different pairs of shoes, right? With that guy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot my shoes. Hey, it's your world championship. Oh, I forgot my shoes, bro. Just give me yours. Can you imagine? Yeah, it's incredible. And I think, what I've realized is sometimes I get hung up on what science says, right? It's, from a scientific level, you cannot build muscle if you do X. Or from a scientific standpoint, as the evidence points out, we cannot do Y if we do X. And while I see there's application, and of course, it always makes sense to follow an evidence-based approach, but then you have folks like Klokov. How do you explain this, man? Or how do you explain kettlebell sport? This is why I think it's so sad that it's so understudied. I understand there's no value behind it, of course. No monetary value. I understand it. But what could we find out if you would really do a proper scientific study on kettlebell? I think they were done in Russia, right, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, not translated or getting lost in translation. I read the book from Dr. Yuri Verkhoshansky, who is translated into English, and sometimes it's just, you don't get it.
You don't get it all the way, yeah.
Or maybe it's just my level of understanding, could be as well. But sometimes I'm like, what? What is he trying to say? But yeah, it's the human body it's just amazing, and I think the same is with training, right? Or with experimenting with ideas, which I love, and I love what Pavel brought to the table. The only thing that I don't like is this iron curtain mentality that this is the only way to do it, which I think they loosened up a little bit.
Right.
But that's what I don't like. And you mentioned about CrossFit. What I don't like about CrossFit is the competitive nature.
Yeah. They push to a point where where it's unsafe on the body.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you allow your student to start throwing really bad reps for the sake of the rep, they need to change that. But I don't know if they will. I mean, they're in it for the money.
Yeah, it's the competitive nature, right? Which it's all about revolving around the idea that you have to do a certain amount of exercises with a certain amount of reps in a given amount of time, which of course creates bad technique when everybody, right? And I think here's an interesting point. I don't think even bad technique is that much of a problem if you move lighter weights. But if you move up to a certain amount of weight, especially with the barbell, it gets really complicated.
Agreed. Okay. Mm-hmm. Get that.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, Moses, we've been talking for 1 hour and 46 minutes. Man, I really appreciate. I love it too, man. And man, first of all, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast. It was an honor to have you.
Honored to be here. I'm very, very thankful.
Awesome. So we'll stay in touch for sure.
Okay.
And I'll send you everything once it's up. So I'm going to share it on YouTube, going to share it on Spotify.
You got it.
And then I'm going to send it to you, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
And let me see if I can try to find a way to help you out on getting someone here in the United States to promote how do you pronounce it? Leb Stark?
Liebestark, yeah, it's you know,
Bell.
funny thing is we have a different name for these.
Okay.
Here's what I thought about, and I'd like to get your take on it.
Okay.
So they're hollow core, right?
Okay.
Like you have. And there's one thing that I've noticed with hollow core competition kettlebells, and I've done some research, and people even notice it. So it's not just me. If you have a hollow core kettlebell, which by the way, I think, I don't know who shared this with me. His name escapes me. He's also a coach from Doyle, Eric Doyle. Oh, yeah. So he shared a story with me that the hollow core competition kettlebell, the concept was from a guy who was doing, I don't know what is USA kettlebells.
Yes.
And then he went into production.
Yes.
And then the Chinese allegedly stole his concept and sold it to everybody. Something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true, but that's what it is. Okay, which is so unfortunate. Oh my God, this is such a horrible story. But here's the thing. What I realized, and other people too, is if you train with a hollow core kettlebell, the weight sits closer to the handle.
Correct.
So if more to the top. So if the weight sits closer to the handle, especially in the ballistics, the swing, the clean and the snatch, and I would even call the jerk a ballistic exercise, then the weight sits closer to your hips.
Correct.
In the backswing. And also, if you rack it, the weight sits closer to your center So it
Right.
doesn't pull you off to the sides as much, right?
Right.
Laterally away. So this creates a unique feeling in the ballistics. And an I say it, an advantageous flow state that is different to the field kettlebells,
Right.
even the competition ones. And so I gave them a name. I call them Superflow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
funny thing is, somebody asked me this. Well, they're hollow core, right? So Kettlebell Kings does them too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Right.
Doesn't have the awesome logo on it, of course. Doesn't have the LS. Yeah, doesn't. So it's the same idea, but here's where I got it from. It's marketing.
Right.
You can have a product with awesome benefits, and everybody sells that product, right? And then you have one guy mentioning the benefits, which the in group knows that they are aware of,
Right.
but everybody else doesn't know that they exist. So that's why I call them Superflow kettlebells, because they feel so awesome when it comes to the ballistics.
You could call them kettlebell aces. And then you could say aces beat kings.
Yeah. That's actually a good idea.
I know.
Kettlebell aces, baby. That's what's
Kettlebell
up. The ace beats the king. Oh, I love this. Oh my God. Oh, that's like BMW against Mercedes, right? That's a cool idea. Yeah. Maybe a limited edition. Yeah. Kettlebell aces. Great idea. Yeah, if you find somebody, we're actually highly interested in maybe finding somebody who wants to purchase kettlebells for the wholesale price, maybe then sell them by themselves or sell them with us, because it's probably easier to have somebody in the US and then distribute them. And you have a large chunk of customers and clients in the US, so
Great.
would make sense. And I even contacted Kettlebell Kings. I contacted them. I said, hey, maybe you guys are interested. Yeah. And they said, unfortunately not, which, no hard feelings, it's totally fine. But yeah, who knows?
They have their own brand. I understand it.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
most definitely. Yeah. So Moses, again, thank you so much for joining, and we'll stay in contact.
You bet. I'll send you some videos. I think you'll enjoy them.
Do it. Appreciate it. Awesome.
Thanks, brother.
On to the next one. Thank you.
You have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you. If you want to take your kettlebell coaching career to the next level, consider getting certified with Liebestark. Check the first link in the description.